we've been able to connect with Magnus Macfarlane-Barrow. He's the founder and CEO of the charity Mary's Meals. He joins us today via Skype from God's country to share some updates on this amazing nonprofit that provides life-changing meals to some of the world's poorest children every school day. Magnus, thank you so much for being with us again. Here you are. How you doing? I'm not hearing anything, but I hope you are at home. Magnus, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, all the way from, as I say, God's country in Scotland. Now, Mary's Meals is feeding more than 2 million children, I think, across 19 countries. The announcement on social media was accompanied by a great picture of students holding up a huge new number. How has this growth been possible during COVID and all the other struggles that we've been facing as a human family?
Yeah, in some ways it just makes no sense that we've kept going forward. And really the short answer to that is, in terms of how, it's people's goodness. You know, over and over again, people just astounding us with their generosity, even in these very, very challenging times, these uncertain times. People just are faithfully supporting this simple thing we do, and that's really what allows us to reach out to the next child waiting and to keep growing, now in 20 countries, in fact.
It's so good to see you and hear you, Magnus. Thank you for being with us. Now, the tagline for Mary's Meals sums up the mission nicely, a simple solution to world hunger. And maybe if you could explain that a little bit for our viewers.
Yeah, it's and by the way, talking about simplicity, I'm not very good with technology, so apologies for all these technical gaps. But it's a simple mission. You know, it's all about one meal every day in a place of education, and we call it that solution to world hunger because it's about meeting that immediate need of every hungry child for food, but by serving it always in the place of education, enabling them to gain that education that can set them free. And we see that it's a reality. It works. It changes the lives of the world's poorest children.
When Mary's Meals, Magnus, began, and I believe it was 1992, you actually, as I recall you telling us, you actually drove with supplies from Scotland to Bosnia. How has the delivery method changed with the enormous number of children that you're helping?
Yeah, so today it's evolved in a lot of ways, and it's not about us transporting gifts, physical gifts from one place to another. It's very much about us raising funds that allow us to buy food locally, and that's really important for us because in doing that we're supporting the local economy. We're helping smallholder farmers grow more food because they know that there's this year-round market that Mary's Meals, needs to buy that food locally. So we see that having a big impact in its own right. And I think in these troubled times in terms of global food systems, we maybe see more than ever just how important that is to encourage people to grow food locally in their own communities.
I'm sure we've asked you this question one way or another before, but how has this impacted your life, your faith, your understanding of the Lord's command to love one another, all of that? How has this changed you, Mary's Meals?
Profoundly, and it's hard for me now, Bishop Reed, because I've been doing it really all my adult life, this work, so it's very hard to kind of imagine my life without it, but I never lose this sense of privilege, of this sense of Mary's Meals being a gift given, not some human invention, certainly not something I thought up, and over and over and over again we experience God's providence in extraordinary ways through the goodness of people, and I'm trying to learn more as I get older, just to trust more, and it shouldn't be difficult really in my experience to trust more, because God never lets us down. He has never let us down since we stepped out and first drove that truck of aid to Bosnia. He has always given us what we need every step of the way when we reach out to feed hungry children today. So it's just such a wonderful privilege to be able to do this work with the poor.
And maybe briefly, if you could, Magnus, since you started and where you are now, talk about possibly the places where the most need is now, or maybe if you could tell us how that need has grown since you first started this, and where maybe some of the places of great need are around where you operate.
Yeah, well, I mean, that joy I just spoke of being able to do this work is certainly, tainted at the moment just by, I would say in the 20 years we've been doing this, I can never remember so many humanitarian crises unfolding at one time in the world. So many more people facing starvation in our world. One in 9 people in this world of plenty doesn't have enough to eat right now. We see huge new crises developing in South Sudan, in Ethiopia, in northern Kenya, in Yemen, the latest country we went into, the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. So there's no shortage of need and growing need. And I do think we need to be careful, though, about not being overwhelmed by that. I've never really been one for the big numbers. I think it's really important, especially in these troubled times, that we think about it in terms of one child. This hunger isn't some abstract concept, about those big numbers and statistics. It's about the child that's suffering today from hunger, and we think that way. How do we just reach that next child? That's what really keeps us going.
Speaking of that, how can we, that means those of us sitting here in the living room, those of us watching, how can we support Mary's Meals as you help one child at a time to be fed and to be happy and to know that they're loved? How can we help support you?
Well, there's just so many wonderful examples of that, including in your part of the world. I saw a wonderful example of a parish. I think it was St. Augustine raising money through their children all the way through Lent. And it's just such a wonderful, perfect example of how Mary's Meals grows. And today it costs us only $21 to feed a child for an entire school year. So that's one straightforward, concrete way to change a child's life, is by making a donation of that size. There's lots of other ways to help, by spreading the word, by organising fundraising events, and maybe most importantly of all, by praying for this work, because Mary's Meals is a fruit of prayer. It comes first in the story of Mary's Meals, and please ask people to keep praying that we might reach more of those hungry children soon.
Well, thank you so much, Magnus, for being with us today. We appreciate you taking time, and we got it worked out. We got you in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that, but thanks for your patience and making sure I was able to join you.
Write another book, because Father Tim has read your 2 books. He needs another one.
We get some great fans of your books here.
Thank you for that encouragement, Bishop Reed. I might just try and do that one day.